After I became a burn victim, my mother disowned me. Getting revenge was the best thing I could have done. After the car accident, my face was unrecognizable. I was sort of expecting that I would scare away strangers, but I never thought I would scare away my own mother. It happened when my single mother had been driving me to school, when she lost control of her car on the icy January road and went crashing into a ditch. The car caught fire, and Mom managed to drag me out, but the damage had already been done. I had sustained second to third degree burns on 50% of my body. My limbs had gotten the worst of it. Mom herself was unharmed, save for bruising on her ribs and a cut across her nose. I spent the next 4 months in the burn unit at British Columbia Children's Hospital, and the place quickly became a second home. Doctors worked tirelessly to save me. I underwent a total of 50 operations, including skin grafts and the amputation of all 5 fingers on each hand. One morning, about a week into my hospital stay, my dad stopped by with a bouquet of colorful tulips and a balloon. His girlfriend Jenny came with him. Dad had been divorced from Mom for 2 years. "Daddy, why doesn't Mommy come see me?" I asked. My words were garbled, given I could barely move my burned lips, but Dad seemed to understand. "Oh, honey," he sighed, ruffling what was left of my charred hair. "Mommy loves you more than anyone else in the world. That's why she doesn't come by very often. It hurts her to see you hurt. But I miss her." "She misses you too, honey. But Mommy, well, Mommy has some problems. It's difficult for a girl your age to understand." I knew even back then that Mom wasn't quite right in the head. I believe that's why Dad left her, but he still cared about her a great deal. After 4 long months, I was finally allowed to go home. My burns were still healing, leaving me with tight, warped skin that itched and throbbed every minute of the day. But I couldn't stop thinking about Mom. She had abandoned me. I was only a little girl, and it was the worst feeling I've ever had. I had my ideas on how I would respond to her actions. She'll regret this one day. That night, I woke up in pain, my skin itching as if I had fire ants crawling all over me, a deep phantom ache in my amputated fingers. Then I sensed a presence, something watching me from a dark corner. It didn't feel malevolent, but it made my spine tingle. Glancing nervously over my shoulder, I was shocked to see a dark figure standing in a corner. It was a little girl, no older than myself. She wore a yellow t-shirt and flowery pink shorts. She was grotesquely deformed. Her flesh appeared to be melting off her body, hanging in heavy folds and bags. It was blackened in areas, pink and raw in others. She was completely bald. And not only that, but her scalp had been charred away, revealing a pearl-white skull beneath. Her eyes were impossibly large, lacking eyelids, and had such heavy cataracts her pupils were invisible. Her arms were shriveled and curled up grotesquely at her sides, but the worst part was her mouth. Her lower jaw hung down at an impossible angle and seemed to have fused to her chest, leaving her face in a permanent scream. I had never seen anything so horrible in my life, but before I could make a sound, the girl raised a shriveled hand and brought it to her gaping mouth, as if trying to shush me. It appeared she was trying to speak, but her frozen jaw made that physically impossible. She placed her hand on my shoulder, and when I forced myself to look into her eyes, I saw compassion. I saw love. "Who are you?" I whimpered. She gently pushed me back into a reclining position, tucked the covers around my scarred, wounded body, and smoothed back my hair. Then she turned and walked silently out of the room, leaving the door open just a crack. I couldn't stop thinking about the little melting girl, and part of me wanted to see her again. Days later, I returned to school. My friends were all delighted to have me back, but many kids avoided me, and some were downright mean. 3 years passed, and I made remarkable progress. I began walking again, and my burns healed better than my doctors expected. By then, I had mostly forgotten about the little melting girl. Around that time, I was entering puberty, which can cripple the self-esteem of even the most beautiful girls. As well as my injuries had healed, I still had a lot of scarring and was missing my left breast. My appearance made me a prime target for bullying. One day, when I was walking home from school, a group of older girls followed me home and threw rocks at me. I ran into the house, crying, and shut myself in my room. I sobbed for over an hour, feeling like a total freak, hideous and unlovable. As I lay on my bed, face buried in a pillow, I felt a hand smooth back my hair. It was the melting girl. She still wore the same outfit and hadn't aged a bit. Her appearance wasn't nearly as shocking the second time around, but I couldn't stifle a frightened squeal. "It's you," I gasped. "What are you doing here?" The melting girl walked over to my desk and scribbled something on a sheet of notebook paper. She held it up so that I could read. "Kids can be cruel," it said. "I'm so ugly," I whimpered. "I'm a monster." She shook her head, then jotted down a second note. "A few scars mean nothing. You've got beautiful blue eyes, gorgeous, shiny golden hair, and the perfect bone structure. You are amazing." I suddenly felt pretty bad for sobbing over my own deformities to this girl who barely looked human anymore. "Are you just saying that to make me feel better?" She shook her head, then placed her hand over her heart. "Who are you?" I demanded. "Are you a ghost?" Once again, she left my room without a word. I tried chasing after her, but she was gone. After searching the house top to bottom, I figured she must be a ghost, and that she had died in the fire that warped her appearance. But who was she? What had happened? Why did only I see her? Did she have something to do with my mom? The following day after school, I decided to speak to my dad. I told him that I wanted to ask him a question about Mom. I reminded him that I was almost 12 years old and had a right to know, and that he had to be honest with me. "Okay, Julia, I'll do my best. What is it? What happened in Mom's past?" I asked him. "Why is she so strange sometimes? Why did she abandon me?" Dad hesitated, biting his lip. He flushed and rubbed his temples. "Well, I think you're at that age now," he said. "I'll tell you everything I know, okay?" I took a deep breath. Okay. Dad poured himself more iced tea and pinched the bridge of his nose. I don't know a whole lot about it, but when I met your mother, she was an orphan at 21 and claimed not to have anyone except her grandmother. It wasn't until a whole year into our relationship that she finally confessed there had been a terrible accident in her childhood. She refused to elaborate. I sank back against the couch cushion, defeated. So you don't know either? No, I'm sorry, honey. Would she tell me if I asked her? I don't think that's a good idea, Julia, said Dad. Jenny, sitting next to me on the couch, nodded, and so, for the time being, I listened to him. But after 5 years passed, I saw the melting girl again. At 16, my confidence had improved. I had friends and good grades. That said, I still had to deal with bullies on a regular basis. But now I could stand up for myself. One day at lunch, my friends and I were discussing the upcoming school dance and what we would wear. Rachel Newton, one of the resident mean girls, sneered at me as she and her friends walked by. You better not wear anything too short, Crispy. Nobody wants to look at your ugly legs. I was sick of it. You're such a freak, Rachel, I snapped. Ever considered seeking professional help? She scowled. I'm the freak. Ever considered plastic surgery? It would make looking at you so much easier. I punched her in the nose. She began screaming as if I just gutted her with a butcher knife, alerting a teacher. She sent me to the principal's office, and while Mrs. Radcliffe was sympathetic, she made me clean up trash and punishment. Later that day, as I was doing so, Rachel showed up again. Julia? Rachel's nose was purple and swollen, dried blood crusting her nostrils. I don't think picking up garbage is punishment enough, Crispy. Rachel brought her foot down on my back, pinning me in place. I began thrashing beneath Rachel's foot, trying to throw off her balance. Dirt filled my mouth. My spine felt seconds away from snapping. I sensed Rachel's fury, her intent on hurting me. She stooped down and grabbed a handful of my hair, wrenching my head back, and raised her fist, ready to land a punch. I was alone, at this girl's mercy, and I couldn't fight back. Help, I whispered. Rachel's grip suddenly fell away. She staggered back, her eyes the size of dinner plates, mouth hanging open. Her friends looked equally stunned. Oh my God, what is that? I followed her appalled gaze to a melted, deformed figure standing 20 feet away. The little melting girl's cloudy eyes were blazing with anger, and her blackened fists kept clenching and unclenching. I was so overjoyed I wanted to cry. What the hell? Rachel shrieked again. Who is that? The girl let out an enraged scream and charged like a raging bull. My tormentors took off into the mist, shrieking like banshees. The girl walked over and helped me to my feet. Thank you, I breathed. In her eyes I saw her words. Let's go home. She held my hand until I got close to my house. Then she hugged me and walked away. But after seeing the melting girl again, I decided that I wanted to figure out who it was. If my mom hadn't moved, she would only be just a few blocks away from where I was. So I made my way over to my mother's place. The house was almost unrecognizable. It was clear that she'd been trying to move on, make new memories, or maybe even forget. The outside of the house was freshly painted, and she'd even got new windows. I knocked on the door, and after a few seconds I saw her, my mother. Her eyes were lined with crow's feet, and the once youthful glow was replaced with a tired sheen. She was silent, looking me up and down. I could see her eyes well up, but she held back her tears. I saw regret in her eyes. Regret, and something else. Fear? I couldn't tell. I remember when I was younger, when I wanted to get revenge on my mother for abandoning me. I figured that forcing her to tell me the truth, something she was clearly incapable of doing, would make me satisfied. I need to know, I said, my voice barely a whisper. When we went to sit down in the unrecognizable living room of the house, I told her about the melting girl. Oh God, oh my God, Julia, she sobbed. Mom, what is it? She pulled me into a crushing hug, her chest heaving as she fought for air. That girl, she's my sister. I was frozen. What? Oh, honey, I guess I can't hold back any longer. Finally, after 16 years, I got to know my mother. She grew up on a farm in Saskatchewan with her twin sister Sarah and their parents. They lived a happy life until an arsonist set the barn on fire. The girls were inside at the time. In a frantic attempt to escape, Sarah fell and broke her leg. She ran to get help, but by then it was too late. The fire had spread out of control, and Sarah couldn't be saved. The fire completely broke Mom. She didn't speak for almost a year, and 4 years later her parents died in a car accident. Mom never recovered emotionally. To this day, I can only imagine what she went through. When you got hurt, it brought back so many terrible memories. I couldn't face it. I was a coward, Julia. I'm so sorry. Don't be. I kissed her cheek. You're the best mother, and I love you. She wiped her nose. I've seen Sarah a few times since she died, but I convinced myself I was dreaming. But it seems she's been watching over you too. Like a guardian angel? She is a guardian angel. That night, I prayed for the first time in years and thanked God for sending down Sarah. 21 years have passed since that day. I have a successful career. I'm married. I have children. I still see Sarah every now and then, but I don't need her protection so much anymore. I've grown strong and confident. I've come a long way. I can't explain Sarah's presence in my life, and I guess I don't need to. I'm just so thankful to have her around. She's been there for me during my darkest hours, protected me from a cruel world when I was at my most vulnerable. My only regret is that Sarah, unlike me, never got a second chance at life.